You're 35,000 feet in the air, and then, thunk, a massive low-frequency impact from directly under your feet. The floor shudders. Or maybe it's a bark, a rapid, rhythmic, mechanical bark, like something alive is directly beneath your seat. Or maybe the engines just went quiet. And in that silence, your brain asks the one question you don't want to ask at 35,000 feet. Is that normal? Here's what nobody tells you before you board. Almost every sound that terrifies passengers is the sound of things working. Today, we go through them one by one, and by the end, you'll understand the machine you're sitting inside. The human brain treats unexpected loud sounds as danger signals. That's not irrational. It's millions of years of evolution. The problem is that our instincts were never calibrated for a world where a 600-pound steel door slamming shut 6 feet below you is the safest thing that could possibly happen on your flight. At 35,000 feet, outside air pressure drops to roughly 3 to 4 pounds per square inch, less than a quarter of sea level. Without intervention, you'd be unconscious within minutes. So the aircraft maintains an internal pressure equivalent to sitting at 6,000 to 8,000 feet above sea level by continuously pumping compressed air into the cabin. That life-critical system makes noise. There was a time when engineers got this wrong, catastrophically wrong. In 1952, the de Havilland Comet became the world's first commercial jet airliner. Faster, higher, sleeker than anything before it. But no one truly understood what thousands of pressurization cycles, pressurizing and depressurizing that metal fuselage on every single flight, would do to the airframe over time. The Comet had square windows. At the corners of those windows, stress concentrated with every pressurization cycle. The metal fatigued after approximately 3,057 cycles. The fuselage of a test aircraft burst open. Real aircraft had already broken apart mid-air. 3. Comets were lost within 12 months. The investigation that followed rewrote global aviation safety law. Every rounded window you have ever looked out of on a commercial flight, that is the comet's legacy. That is what we learn. So, let's go through the sounds. About 30 seconds after wheels leave the runway, 2 heavy impacts from below. This is the main landing gear folding up into the aircraft's belly. Massive hydraulic systems hoist the assembly upward. Heavy doors open, the gear tucks inside, and the doors slam shut. On many aircraft, the nose wheel is braked to a full stop while it's still in midair, so it doesn't spin freely and vibrate inside the fuselage at 300 miles per hour. Think of it like slamming a deadbolt on a vault door. The louder and more definitive that clunk, the better. That sound is confirmation, a gear that half deployed and sat uncertain. That would be the thing to fear. Your wing does not have a fixed shape. At cruise, it's sleek and optimized for speed, but at the slow speeds needed for takeoff and landing, that shape doesn't generate enough lift, so the wing physically expands. Hydraulic actuators push out large panels called flaps at the rear and slats at the front, increasing the wing surface area to generate lift at low speed. You feel a deep rumble, sometimes a vibration through the fuselage. The wing is literally reshaping itself on demand in flight to match the physics of the moment. If you've flown on an Airbus A320, you've heard it. A rapid, rhythmic, mechanical bark. On, off, directly under your seat. That is the power transfer unit. It's set the PTU. The A320 runs 2 separate hydraulic systems. When the second engine starts, the PTU self-tests by rapidly cycling pressure between them at 3,000 pounds per square inch, confirming both systems are functional and ready. The bark is the checklist. If the PTU doesn't bark during engine start, the warning computers alert the pilots. The sound you're dreading is the aircraft confirming it's safe to fly. As the aircraft climbs, the pressurization system works continuously, pumping in compressed air bled from the engines, adjusting constantly as altitude changes. What you feel is a gradual shift in ear pressure, sometimes a soft hiss or thump from the overhead system. The denser, pressurized air inside the cabin also changes how sound travels, which is part of why everything sounds louder and more alarming up here than it would on the ground. The hiss is the pump. It is keeping you alive. You want to hear it. 2 minutes after takeoff, the engines noticeably reduce in pitch. For a few seconds, the aircraft feels like it's losing power. It is not. Takeoff power is the maximum rated thrust the engines can produce, and intense, expensive, and mechanically stressful. It is only used for the initial climb. Once safely airborne, pilots reduce to normal climb power. The quiet is efficiency. The roar was the exception. You have heard every single one of these sounds before. You live with versions of them every day. That bark in PTU. Your refrigerator does the exact same thing. Its compressor cycles on when internal temperature rises past a threshold, runs until pressure is restored, then shuts off. The PTU is running at 3,000 pounds per square inch instead of 150, and it's doing it at 35,000 feet instead of your kitchen. But the mechanism is identical. The pressurization hiss. Every time you turn on your car's AC, compressed air is routed through the cabin on demand. Same principle. Temperature-controlled air, delivered by a system you never think about, producing sounds you've tuned out completely. The engine spool down, walk past a large rooftop HVAC unit as it throttles back from startup to normal running speed. That drop from a high-pitched whine to a lower settled hum is acoustically identical to what you hear in the cabin 2 minutes after takeoff. And the Comet's pressurization failure, that's a soda can. Every pressurized metal container, a cola can, scuba tank, fire extinguisher, holds high pressure gas inside a thin metal wall. Stress that wall repeatedly at a weak point and it fatigues. The Comet's weak points were the corners of its square windows. 3,000 cycles until the metal simply gave out. Modern commercial aircraft are designed to handle 90,000 or more pressurization cycles before structural fatigue becomes a concern. The Comet failed at 3,057. That gap between 3,000 and 90,000 almost is 70 years of hard-learned aviation physics. It is the distance between a pioneer and a professional. Here is the honest part. Not every unusual sound is harmless. Some genuinely do indicate a problem. The difference between a normal sound and an abnormal one is not something a passenger can detect by ear alone. A compressor stall, where a disruption in airflow causes an engine to backfire, sounds like a shotgun blast. The aircraft lurches. Pilots respond immediately. Their asymmetric landing gear deployment triggers cockpit warnings action within seconds. The pilots know the difference because of context. Altitude, phase of flight, what the instruments say, what the checklist demands. Aircraft have triple redundant sensors, so the flight deck has information no passenger in row 24 could possibly have. Your anxiety is rational. Your instincts aren't wrong. They're just untrained for this environment. The aircraft systems are trained. The pilots are trained. The protocols are in place. Modern aviation became so reliable and so well monitored that passengers can no longer distinguish a normal sound from an emergency, because emergencies almost never happen. That is a very good problem to have. The next time you board a flight, here's what you're going to hear. A bark under your seat as the hydraulics self-test. A rumble as the wing reshapes for takeoff. A double thunk as the gear locks in. A hiss as the cabin pressurizes. And then 2 minutes. After wheels up, the engines quietly settling into cruise. Every sound is the aircraft running its checklist, telling you in the language of pistons and compressed air, everything is working. The Comet's engineers didn't understand that language. We do now. So next time you fly, which sound are you going to listen for?